Everyone, East Coast Reefer here. I'll cut right to the chase. Wanted to upload the talk that Jamie Craggs gave at Coral Freaks this year. It was a really interesting talk and I hadn't seen it posted anywhere yet, so I know a lot of people were quite interested to hear what was said. Apologies, it's not the best audio quality. It's certainly good enough to hear, but not to the standard I would have liked. So hopefully you enjoy this. It's quite long, just to warn you up front. It's about 35 minutes of the talk, but it is really interesting, I promise you.
So Jamie, thanks for coming. I'll tell you what, I work in the rebuild as well, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and my American colleagues, your name comes up more times than anyone else. Jamie Craggs has mentioned to me 20 times a day. They idolise you over there. You are our greatest British export in terms of what you do, and you can't underestimate, the impact that you've had on global, coral spawning. You pioneered it, and now people talk about coral spawning every day, and it all traces back to you. So that is quite amazing.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, so when did you start that then? So what's your journey? How did this all come about?
A bit like Tony, I started when I was probably about 7 or 8, collecting frog spawn at the local pond and trying to reel that, and then got into redwater pig. My first redwater pig tank about 11. That sort of time was breeding on mantoids, so gouramis and fighting fish and stuff. I'm an Essex boy as well. I might not sound like that, but I am. I grew up on the coast in Brighton, so I kind of either live on or in the sea all my life, and I kind of moved away from the hobby for a few years. I was into windsurfing a lot, got back into fishing.
What sort of age was this then, sorry?
So probably 16 to 19. I was just windsurfing all the time. I didn't do very well at school, but I was pretty good at windsurfing. I eventually got into uni down in Plymouth and started fish keeping again, much to my flatmates' annoyance, because our electricity bill was through the roof. They always would sort of laugh and joke they would come and bathe in the multiple tanks that were in the house at the time.
So what did you study at uni? Is there a pathway to this? Was it biology or?
Yeah, marine biology with ecology, and I went through a clearing process because I wasn't very good at school, but I was lucky I got into uni and everything the stars aligned when I got there. I really kind of felt like coming. I started, keeping freshwater fish again, breeding freshwater fish while I was at uni and selling those for credit at the local shops. And then I started my first marine tank after uni. So it was about 98.
Yeah.
It was horrible, but I had an underground filter, which I later found out was actually invented for ornament.
Wow.
We've got a journal from about 1920, I think. That described the underground filter. So it literally was invented as an ornament museum. And then after uni, did a little bit of I paid to go out on an expedition out in the Philippines for 3 months and learn about coral reef ecology, and then started London Aquarium. I was keeping all the coral tanks in London Aquarium from 99. And then eventually moved over to Ornament as a curator about 16 years ago now.
Okay, wow. That's quite a long time. And there's a bit of a tie-in with Tony and Qatar, because you've just come back from Qatar. You literally missed each other on the flights.
My batteries ran out of my phone, and I saw that you were in the airport literally at the same time.
You were hiding from Jamie. You were behind the bin. Wait for him to go past.
But I've just come back working with Qatar University, a big coral spawning program that we've been running for about 3 years out there.
Okay.
And it's been the most successful trip so far. So we reared about 3 million larvae.
Wow.
They had 18 colonies spawned yesterday. I just had a message that they've had more spawning today. So
And are these corals that are native to their seas?
Yeah.
So what's this?
Hottest ocean of the earth. So we're focusing on 5 species. So this latest one was with Dipsastrius, the old Fabius.
And so what sea is this? Sorry.
The Arabian Gulf.
Arabian Gulf.
So the idea is, within the genetic code of those individuals is hopefully some answer about what drives thermal resilience in our oceans.
Okay.
So if we can learn from that, can that be applied to other restoration work really? And the whole project is about reef restoration, but focusing on ex situ spawning to generate material to rebuild reefs there. So yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, so let's talk about the coral spawning lab, because that is kind of your baby, presumably. This is, you started it.
Yeah, I mean, just reversing that back, it all started with ornament. So, I took over as curator there 16 years ago, and in the UK, you have something called a zoo license. So all zoos and aquariums have to, they have inspections to make sure there's certain standards that are met. And that allows you to have a license and you can have members of the public in. Part of that is we have to be doing health and safety, welfare management, but conservation research, education are really important drivers within that. And the museum, sort of 3 or 4 years, well, probably even 5 years before we started, had done basically nothing on conservation or research. And so they had a bit of a knuckles to rap, saying you really need to focus on lifting that part of working with the collection. So it gave me the mandate to say, right, we really need to focus on research. It's always been my driving force of working with the aquarium is we should be, if we can look after animals to the best ability, they often will breed. If they breed, then it opens up a whole world of opportunities of research and then also how that research then supports in situ conservation. And so, I've worked with corals my whole career, 25 years in public aquariums, and so I really steered the ornament that we would focus very heavily on research behind the scenes. We were doing a lot of jellyfish work, breeding jellyfish. So I think we bred like 14 species, and really they're the cousins of corals, right? So we were doing work with Southampton Uni, looking at the seasonal change that triggers jellyfish production. And I basically just applied all that we were learning with jellyfish and flipped over to corals to say, well, why are they any different? And so all of this coral spawning started with jellyfish as the sort of example, and then a tweet came out from Fiji. There's a dive company saying, well, if you come out diving in 3 days' time, you'll come see the spawning. And that was like, that to me was the moment I kind of started figuring it out. Well, if they're spawning there, they must know something about all those environmental parameters, so that gives a date that we can work on, look back at what's happening in the ocean in Fiji, and if we apply that to an aquarium system, then would they spawn? And that's what started Project Coral. So 2012, we built systems, very rudimentary, off the, building materials, bits of wood, and it's an absolute mess. But lo and behold, we got 2 corals, 2 aquaporas, and we got them to spawn in 8 months. So we kind of knew we were onto something there, and the whole thing kind of.
So what were the triggers to make it spawn? Is this because I've seen you black ice? Is it moonlight? Is it temperature? How did you?
So the original thinking was the first that every species has species-specific drivers. So they have to hit a certain age to become sexually mature, and the thinking at the time was they had to hit a certain size.
Yeah.
I don't actually think that is the case now. I think it's more polyp age that drives it. So, if you've got a coral, you've got to get it to an age.
Okay.
And so most aquaporas hit reproduction about 3 years old from second. Once they hit that age, you have to feed them. So they acquire a lot of their energy from zooxanthellae, but they're also voracious predators. Corals can eat everything from bacteria, obviously absorb nutrients out of water, bacteria, right the way up to big prey items. So if you've got corals right age, you're feeding it, and then the seasonal temperature change is the thing that triggers it to produce the eggs to start with. And the current theory is that these parameters work at a progressively finer scale to trigger them to release at this exact moment. So once the temperature's coming out of winter and climbing into the summer, the eggs are maturing inside the coral. And it depends on the coral species, so we've done a lot of histology that corals aquaporas can take up to 10 months for the eggs to develop. whereas something like a galaxia, it may be 3 months, so it's quite quick. So once you've got this temperature rise, there's the interplay between how long the day length is, and then the interplay between the lunar cycles. The lunar cycle is the thing that allows us to pinpoint, broadly, it's like the exact day, but certainly a window of time. So, and the theory with the lunar cycle is that as the sun is set and the moon is rising, you have a period of absolute darkness. And so, sometimes we can be in the middle of the day and see the moon up, right? So we have to replicate those phases of the moon because the corals are tuned in to the absolute period of darkness between sunset and moon rising, and that extends by approximately 48 minutes each day. And so the corals inside them have something called cryptochromes, which are light-sensitive cells, and they are picking up on that absolute darkness cue. So we figured this out over time, that these blackout lines are allowing us to control that light-dark environment. Yeah. Without that, they will still spawn. They spawn in my kitchen. I put the blackout line for the first few years in the kitchen, and then that doesn't go up anymore.
I think we featured your kitchen tank on this. We'll come back around. So.
Yeah. They will still spawn without that period of darkness, but the period of darkness allows them to synchronise. So if you don't give them that darkness period, the spawning can be a bit erratic. If it's erratic, you may have 10 individuals, right? They all have to go on the same night. So all alpha are hermaphrodites, releasing eggs and sperm, but they can't self-fertilise. So this is actually the fertilisation going on right now. So these are the sperm cells going into the egg, right? So we need to get eggs and sperm in packages of multiple colonies to open up all the research. If they go on different nights, it's wasted. It's anti-food. So by blacking out and then controlling that light-dark environment provides the access.
What I like about it is that this wasn't it is a lab, it is science, but you were using readily available aquarium equipment, lighting, pumps, tanks, salt, everything.
Everything. The advancement that has happened in our industry, and none of this would be possible without that advancement and the likes of all the companies you've got listed here. So this is accessible to everyone. It's amazingly powerful. The kit that we have access to now. This is a dream that I wanted to do at London 20 years ago. We couldn't do it because we didn't have the apex. The early stages we used GHL. I had a volunteer who was a computer programmer. He hacked into the back of the GHL and wrote code.
Wow.
And then, all we done project depended his ability. He knows volunteering for us, but that's what we used to do apex. Because the user interface is brilliant.
So what's the apex doing? What's it controlling?
So on the apex, you can program seasonality. So there's the seasonal tables, you put in the temperature profiles, and so you put in wherever you want to replicate in the world. Okay, so say you're going to be in Reefer, Australia, wherever that might be. We've just come back from. You first put in, you have access to what the temperature is doing in the ocean. There's loads of data sets. Some of them are scientific. You can literally download data in real time coming from buoys, or you can go on things like surf reports and use that general trend of what the temperature is doing in that ocean. So in this seasonal table, on the first of each month, you put down what the temperature should be, and the apex then just incrementally works out between the 1st of Jan and the 1st of Feb, and it will control your pumps and your chillers, and you'll follow that trend. You can do the same with the photo period. Just go on timeofday.com, you put in any place on the planet, and then do the same thing.
And so were LED aquarium lights an integral part of this development, or could you do a bit of that halo? Is it moonlight lights, did you say?
Yes, the early stages we would do with T5, so on and off. And you can small corals like that. I think the ability with the LEDs is we can do things like solar radiation as well. So if we imagine directly on the equator, you have no variation in the data. It's 12 when it's bang on the equator. And there's some research done on rubber plantations in plants. And the trigger that gets rubber plants to flower is different on the equator than it is when you move north and south of the equator. If you move north and south, the plants are very much driven by the photoperiod change. When they're bang on the equator, they're triggered by something called solar radiation. And it's to do with the elliptical movement of the sun around, or the earth around the sun. The sun is closest to the earth at 2 points of the year, at the spring equinox and the autumn equinox. And when you look at the equator and you plot out the solar radiation curve, you get a big peak in spring, and then you get a secondary peak in autumn. And the rubber plants are tuned into this. And we think this is playing some role with the corals as well, but definitely, I mean, we ran an experiment, Matt is in the audience here, and we ran an experiment for 3.5 years trying to disentangle the role of light dynamics over temperature profiles. But it's all done through hobbyist grey kit.
Right. And this is the timing you were appearing now, because the corals were spawning in Indonesia last week.
Yep.
So are they still spawning now? Is it a short period or?
So Indonesia is an interesting one. There's not a lot of information known. Vincent Chalias has been posting stuff out recently. I've been talking with him a lot over the last few years. And whenever you're working in an area, that's the first thing you have to do is understand what the pattern is. So again, Matt's here, and Matt and I have spent the last 3 years working in the Maldives, training a team up out there and how to determine when a species is going to spawn. That work, rather than Australia that has this sort of peak in November, December, that work we've now discovered that Maldives has 8 months of spawning. So different species are going at different times of year, and that is gold dust for reef restoration. It means that you're not just having to concentrate all your effort in a 1 month or 2 month period. You've got 8 bites of the cherry to be able to work with it, just as long as you understand different seasons. Indonesia, through Vincent's work, we're slowly starting to understand that seasonality. I think it will be a little bit spread out here.
What I like about what you've done though, part of your kind of hack, once you've learned how to spawn them, is that you can now manipulate these triggers. The last time you gave a talk here at Paul's other event, you said how, in the ocean, it's at night, it's a problem, you don't know when it's going to be, and you've brought in such controls now that you can get them to spawn in the day instead of at night, in your home instead of in the ocean, and even not the weekend, because you don't want to work the weekends, you can have it in the week.
Yeah, it's got, the control is amazing. When we first started with this, I was still using my in-situ mentality, so I've been lucky to be in the ocean and seeing spawning. We brought corals back from Singapore, and I was still using that thought process that we had to have, the lighting up through the day to service the tanks, and then we would have to work all night to capture the spawns. We got special government permits to bring 15 colonies back from Singapore in 2015, and we specifically collected those in February because the spawning's normally March, April. We have to be at work at 8 in the morning to run a public aquarium. We were then staying late to try and monitor when the spawning was happening. And we've done this for about 10, 12 nights in a row, finishing work at like midnight, going back home, a couple of hours to get back in at 8. We were absolutely wrecked. And we'd gone past the window when they were spawning in the day, out in Singapore. So colleagues in Singapore were in the ocean going, it's gone tonight, it's gone. And we were like, nothing's going. We were thinking, well, okay, maybe they're delayed and they're going to go the next month. So I think after 12 nights of observations, we stopped. We actually basically missed the spawn that year. The night that we stopped, they were with us. So we missed the whole night. This was a 10-month process of getting these corals in. We missed it, then I had to wait 12 months to have another crack at cherry wine. But it was. I wasn't very good at work. When we found out that we missed it, I was a bit annoyed. But it was the most important learning curve. You learn so much from your failures to say, why are we doing it like this? You've got all this control, let's just flip the whole thing on its head, make it small in the day. So now, if you follow Ashley on Instagram, all the blackout lines have just started going up at the Hornman. We generally will keep them in their normal lighting for about 10 months a year, then a month before spawning we'll flip the cycle. So we don't acclimate that in, it's literally just go into the apex, change it to the 8 hours difference, and so the one day they're just a super short day, and they flip onto that cycle very quickly. We generally do it 12, about 4 weeks before the spawn, but Qatar, we were so rushed at the start of the project, we did it a week before, and they still moved. So again, we're learning so much about that plasticity of the spawning. Then we started taking that step further with this experiment that I say Matt and I were doing for 3.5 years. We then started looking at, well, if we know a species spawns in November, how about we move it and go, well, let's make it spawn in June or whatever. So the theory is if you have 12 systems in a year, 12 systems, you could phase shift and have 12 spawns a year. That increases your access to material, you can do more, whatever you want to do with that material. And so really the start of the Coral Spawning Lab was Mike was asked to go and present out in at Cal University. They do something called CRISPR-Cas9. So this is gene editing work. So when you are trying to understand what genes are responsible for a trait, what you have to do is either turn off that gene and rear the animal and see what that gene has done, or you can snip out a gene and put a new gene in. And the way you do that is you do it at the point of fertilization. So you inject the egg, you snip out the gene, and then you do the fertilizations, and that's the CRISPR-Cas9. To do that, you obviously need access to the eggs. And if you've got literally just one spawn a year, you're trying to relearn that technique, and the progress is super slow. So they basically wanted multiple spawns a year. They asked for 24. We ended up designing a system. In the first year, they had 96 spawning events. Wow. So it just exploded their research potential. And it's given us a massive amount of control over what we can now do.
So, we're all kind of hanging our hopes on you as kind of saving the oceans. So, how under threat are natural coral reefs? The last time you were here a year ago, I think there was another heat wave and you were like, this is bad, this is really bad. You had the data from NOAA, I think. Are they getting more frequent? Are they getting more severe? Can you tell us about
that? It doesn't, it really doesn't. I got invited out to Bonaire earlier this year, and I think the Caribbean is unfortunately showing us what's coming down the line for the rest of the world's oceans. It's pretty apocalyptic. I mean, Bonaire, it's the first time I've dived there, and there's been a disease called skindledine. It's affecting all massive corals in the Caribbean, so not only are they having this bleaching as a result of thermal stress, but they're also getting this rapid disease that's spread. And in Bonaire, you go below 8 meters, and it's almost 100% mortality. It is
below 8 meters, not shallow.
Bizarrely, with skindledine, they don't understand what's going on here. The deeper, from 8 meters down, the disease has completely ravaged the reef. Between the sort of 8 and 5 meter, it's there, but it seems to be checked. I was having a discussion with a researcher last week about that, and they think that the diseases affecting the zooxanthellae and ultimately the clade of zooxanthellae that is present in the coral at depth is more susceptible. But this disease wasn't in that region 2 years ago. So it's literally wiped out the reef in that speed of time. It's a depressing story, it really is. And you look at the IPCC reports, and if we hit 1.5 degrees, then 70% of the world's reefs are affected. We're not going to hit 1.5. We're not even going to stop at probably 2.5. So this is coming down the line, and it will have a big impact on the whole. Because I would say we've got 10 years of actually getting corals from the ocean coming into the trade. That's my prediction.
Okay. And so, but then we think, well, we're okay. We've got Jamie. So Jamie can save us. But you took quite a pragmatic kind of approach in the last time we spoke, and you were like, the Great Barrier Reef being this big. I mean, what impact can your work have? I mean, if someone said, repopulate this reef for us, Jamie, what can you do?
So there was a task force meeting at Saudi last year in January where they brought people in all over the world, and a guy called Carlos Duarte is one of the main researchers in CAS, and he sort of got up and presented about the impact that restoration is having to date. And when you top the global restoration footprint that's happened, it's something like 0.0001% coverage so far. So it's basically nothing. And to protect 30% of the world's reefs, which is the goal by 2030, we need to be producing billions of corals. And we're nowhere near the scale of that scale here. There's amazing work going around the world. Restoration will not save the reefs. It will give, hopefully, some little pockets that provide glimmers of hope. I think that's, and I think everyone in restoration is not saying this is the solution. Things like biobanks, land-based biobanks, closed water rock, crime preservation, restoration, how you breathe thermally tolerant corals. All of these tools have to come together to give reefs a future. There are places though that are showing resilience. Often they're reefs that are very turbid, they're not very sexy from a point of view of, the Great Barrier Reef is a classic example. The reefs direct off the coast, really murky, perhaps not as diverse as the outer barrier reef, but no one dies if they all blast out to go out to these sort of pristine reefs.
Yeah.
Those pristine reefs just fall over as soon as the thermal stress event comes in. These more turbid reefs are actually pretty resilient, and we think a lot of that is because of feeding, heterotrophic feeding, so that boosts up the thermal resilience. So these reefs will be the source populations that will hopefully then repopulate.
But are they not different genera of corals? Are they not,
Some yes, but you do still get a spread across the regions.
So you bred 50 coral species?
I think I'm kind of losing count. I think we're at 52, 53.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. We tend to think of you as breeding hard corals. It occurred to me the other day. Do you breed soft corals? Do you breed leathers? Do you breed GSP?
we haven't focused on that. That's all we have. We have been running a project for the last couple of years on big sea fans off the UK coast. So we've tried now to apply this approach to British waters. So we've got a PhD student from Exeter University. She's been doing some great work looking at the genetic connectivity of the population. So the Irish Sea is the northernmost range, and then it goes all the way around into the Mediterranean. So the previous PhD before her actually did the genetic relatedness. The missing part of that is to understand spawning and how the larvae swim around to connect those up. And so the goal for the last couple of years has been to bring pink sea clams from Plymouth, and they'll be following a pattern, exactly the same way as the tropical corals, but for Plymouth waters. And we had our first spawning a month ago.
So this is a temperate Gorgonian?
Temperate Gorgonian.
Non-photosynthetic?
Non-photosynthetic, yeah. So Paul's he'll be out supplying the reef nutrition food.
Let's talk about that. So what are they feeding on?
So we, again, trying to cover a broad range of food types. So we designed a system, again, with the Apex taking control of it, where it has alternating tidal patterns going back and forwards. So there's a 6-hour tidal pattern, and we dose the food on the making tide. And the idea behind that is the polyp bends with the flow. And so that flow rate is critical to the feeding success. So the reason why you get them growing out in a laminar plane like that is the tidal pads coming in that direction and back in that direction. The polyp then bends and it creates a back eddy around the polyp, and that improves the feeding efficiency. Wow. So about 10 centimetres per second is the optimal flow. And so we dose the food in on that flow pattern. And we do everything from phytoplankton to oyster feast to Newhatch Artemia. Generally, Newhatch Artemia is done every day, and then we'll alternate a different food each day as well.
And so tying all that back into, spawning acros, and obviously that's what myself and all these guys, we just think, wow, if we can spawn acros, and you said it's nutrition related as well. What's Jamie's secret sauce for feeding these corals to get spawned?
So the secret sauce in my home, what stays in the home. So we well enough yet, I think, in terms of the impacts the impact that has on breeding. I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done. The caveat I do have is we have spawning in our main coral displays at work and at home. I don't feed the corals at home or the main reef display. We broadcast feed the fish. The fish are excreting. The corals will be collected some, and they still reproduce perfectly well. In terms of our research systems, we will isolate those every day for 2 hours, and we'll put again a broadcast mix of various foods. Generally, most small frozen feeds, basically. So frozen Reefers, frozen Cyclops, that type of thing. But we don't have like this is the perfect ingredient. I think they probably would be spawning even without that, because I think they're getting a lot of nutrition from the zoos out there, and just the surplus food to the fish.
Is there any truth in that? Obviously, we know that Indonesian corals were spawning last week. Is there any truth in recently imported Indonesian corals being likely to spawn last week? If we bought them 3 weeks ago, they're just going to go for it.
Yeah, 100%. So the thing with Indonesia, the way that you buy the corals is they're farmed in the ocean, right? So a lot of them are quite small.
Yeah.
If you bring in or buy from Paul Australian corals, and I think we should go over and break some Paul's corals and have a look at and then someone can buy a Craggs colony. Now is the time. If you buy an Australian coral, they will have eggs.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they visible? Do they die? If you fragged it, if you
We'll do it, Paul, yeah?
Yeah.
Can we break some
There's some Eastern Australian corals at the moment.
Perfect. It's very easy. You break the branch off and you look through the cross section, right? Particularly when they're this close to spawning, they're going to start pigmenting. When they're white, you just need to get your eye in or have good eyesight. When they're pigmented, it's very easy to see. They're just little red dots in the cross section. So if anyone wants to spawn corals, probably the easiest thing to do is buy 4 or 6 pieces. Generally, they have to be different individuals. So in Australia, because they're chopped off a much bigger individual, if you buy them this time of year, they'll have eggs in. You need to buy multiple individuals to allow you to do the fertilisation.
Of the same species, or
You can hybridise, but there's a lot more work to it.
Yeah, a whole other subject.
Yeah, I've been chatting with Sanjay about it, and he's had some spawning recently. He's going to try and do hybridisation, but you will find the success rate is about a tenth of just working with a single species. A crop immediate borer is perfect starting acro to work with from Australia. If you get that, you'll have spawning probably around the 21st to the 26th of November.
Paul, have you got the Australian millies in?
That's a difficult one. I didn't send them. Do you know why I didn't get any lilies? Because Mike had them all.
Yeah, and we have those as well.
So that's why. But they might be. I can't remember what the colour.
Most of the millies we get are Indo, aren't they?
Yeah.
Mariculture Indo.
Indo lilies worth a go?
Well,
Indo lilies worth a go?
if they don't pick those aside, we can sort of break some of them. Okay. No, but I think the point is everyone who's got a mature tank will have spawn.
Yeah.
The amount of time you've got on a forum and someone say, oh, my urchins spawn, my snails spawn, it's probably not that, it's probably corals.
Wow.
So whenever you're taking a branch and giving it to a share of friend, just look through the cross section, and if you want to work with spawning, just get multiple individuals of the same species. And that's the starting point.
So we've only got a few minutes left of yourself before we talk again this afternoon. But, so say coral spawned in a home aquarium. You know our setups, they're all very similar. So it floats to the surface, off down the weir, it's gone.
Yeah.
What's the...
So, I don't know whether, as this goes through, there'll be a picture of something called setting. So, with aquacorals, you'll see these little dots along the branch. That's the expert bundle coming up into the mouth of the coral. You have to turn the flow off in your tank, turn all your internal pumps off, just have static volume water. Once that individual's set, it is going to spawn. You just need to sit and wait for those packages to float up to the surface, and you'll see, I've got a little video in there just skimming off the surface at home. I have a little side tank, and it literally is like this big, and I just built buckets that I cut little meshes out the windows. I put all the eggs in there and just allow the fertilisation to take place.
How long does that take?
Fertilisation, so the bundle breaks apart in about 30 minutes, anywhere between half an hour to an hour and a half. We then leave the eggs and sperm together. I generally do that in a washing up bowl at home, or we do it in bowls at the museum down the lab. You want to leave that 45 minutes for fertilisation to take place. Best thing to do is to try and then wash the sperm away from the eggs, so you just mouth siphon and make sure you're doing that. And you get it wrong once. Let's put it like that. You get it wrong once.
This is what I mean.
And then you wash the eggs and then put them in these bowls. And then you've got 4 days for the embryos to develop and form the larvae. They then settle on whatever you want to put, like plugs or.
But settlements are big, isn't it?
Settlements are big. There's lots of bottlenecks of trying to maximise the success. If you're using frag plugs, it's good to have the frag plugs in your tank for a month. Don't go too long, don't go too short. It needs to be a month. Get past that kind of green, filamentous, slimy stage, because we know that crustose coralline CCA provides some of the bacteria associated with that are the triggers to settle corals. So you want the plugs to be a little bit conditioned, but also not too conditioned because the algae will also smell them.
And just finally, you did, let's talk about urchins, because part of your early kind of research, you thought, well, if I've got tiny coral larvae that need cleaning, let's make a tiny urchin.
Exactly. So it was one of the chaps from PhD. Adult urchins will grind the rock down to bedrock, right? They're really good at grazing everything that outcompetes the coral. So the problem is they'll also eat the baby coral. So we thought, well, we need to spawn the sea urchins to mix juvenile urchins with juvenile corals. So we started doing a lot of work on phytoplankton culturing, which then allowed us to spawn the urchins. We had to rear those about 2 months before the coral spawning, and that gives enough time to get through their pelagic phase, grow them out, and then introduce them. And it worked beautifully. We basically, the more urchins we put in, we got an 8-fold survival of the juvenile coral. So if you've got more coral, got more productivity, and then the urchins become a sort of byproduct. And then we started looking at this, if we then breed a different species of urchin that could be used in the human food industry, could you then create a secondary income for a restoration project? Right. So you create more corals for restoration, but then you pay for the restoration by selling urchins. And so we got a grant. Hartley, who's my deputy at the ornament, went out to Palau this year for 4 weeks and built an urchin spawning lab out of Palau. We're going to be testing these over the next few years. Right. With a view that you're bringing. What drives us with this? There's loads of opportunity in various trade, but it's not my main driver. The thing that I want to do is look at how do we create income for people in reef nations that supports the reef, brings them away from destructive fishing techniques. There's lots of opportunity, I think, there.
So, hopefully you found that as interesting as I did. I must admit I was absolutely riveted listening to Jamie talk all about what he's up to with coral spawning. Thank you very much for watching to the end, and I'll see you in another video really soon.